Hello bachcho, welcome to Hello Biology. This is the fourth lecture of the chapter, Principles of Inheritance and Variations. In our previous lectures, we discussed Mendel's monohybrid cross, dihybrid cross, and the important observations that emerged from these experiments. But Mendel did not stop at making observations. He carefully analyzed his results and proposed certain fundamental principles that explain how traits are transmitted from parents to offspring. These principles became famous as Mendel's laws of inheritance and form the foundation of classical genetics. So in today's lecture, let us understand the laws that made Mendel the father of genetics and changed our understanding of heredity forever. Students, before we start discussing Mendel's laws one by one, let us first understand where these laws came from. Mendel did not simply propose these laws without evidence. Every law was based on the observations he made during his experiments on pea plants. As you can see in this flowchart, Mendel's laws of inheritance are broadly divided into two groups. The first group is based on the monohybrid cross, where only one character was studied at a time. From the results of the monohybrid cross, Mendel proposed two important laws, the law of dominance and the law of segregation. The second group is based on the dihybrid cross, where two characters were studied simultaneously. From the observations of the dihybrid cross, Mendel proposed another important law, the law of independent assortment. So students, this slide is showing us the origin of Mendel's laws. Monohybrid cross gave us the law of dominance and the law of segregation, while dihybrid cross led to the law of independent assortment. Now, let us begin with the very first law proposed by Mendel, the law of dominance. The first and most important law proposed by Mendel, the law of dominance. This law was based on the observations Mendel made during his monohybrid cross experiments. According to the law of dominance, when two contrasting traits of a character come together in a hybrid, only one trait expresses itself in the F1 generation, while the other remains hidden. The trait that appears in the F1 generation is called the dominant trait, and the trait that remains hidden is called the recessive trait. Let us understand this with the example shown on the slide. Mendel crossed a pure round-seeded pea plant with a pure wrinkled-seeded pea plant. Here, round seed shape is represented by the factor capital R, while wrinkled seed shape is represented by the factor small r. When these two parent plants were crossed, all the offspring of the F1 generation had round seeds. Not a single plant showed the wrinkled trait. Now, students, think about this carefully. If both traits were equally strong, we should have seen both round and wrinkled seeds in the F1 generation. But Mendel observed only round seeds. From this observation, he concluded that the factor for round seed shape is dominant over the factor for wrinkled seed shape. However, the wrinkled trait did not disappear completely. It was still present in the offspring, but remained hidden because of the dominant round factor. This hidden trait reappeared later in the F2 generation. Therefore, Mendel proposed the law of dominance, which states that when two contrasting factors are present together, only the dominant factor expresses itself, while the recessive factor remains masked. So students, always remember, dominant trait equals expressed in F1 generation. Recessive trait equals hidden in F1 generation, but not lost. Example, round seed shape is dominant over wrinkled seed shape. This simple observation became the foundation of one of the most important laws in genetics, the law of dominance. Students, one interesting historical fact is that Mendel himself referred to this idea as the postulate of dominance. Later, in 1901, the scientist Correns recognized its importance and elevated it to the status of the law of dominance. Since then, it has been accepted as one of the fundamental laws explaining how traits are inherited from parents to offspring. Students, let us now understand the law of dominance step by step. According to Mendel, characters are controlled by discrete hereditary units called factors. Today, these factors are known as alleles. The first important point is that every character is controlled by a pair of alleles. In other words, alleles always occur in pairs. For example, seed shape in pea plants is controlled by two alleles, one inherited from the mother and the other from the father. Now the question is, what happens when the two alleles are different? Mendel observed that in a hybrid, only one allele is able to express its effect, while the other allele remains hidden. The allele that expresses itself in the hybrid is called the dominant allele. The allele that does not express itself in the presence of the dominant allele is called the recessive allele. Let us take the example of seed shape. When a plant carrying the allele for round seeds is crossed with a plant carrying the allele for wrinkled seeds, the offspring show only the round seed character. This means the allele for round seed shape is dominant, while the allele for wrinkled seed shape is recessive. However, students, remember one important thing. The recessive allele does not disappear. It remains present in the hybrid, but is simply masked by the dominant allele. Therefore, the law of dominance states that when two contrasting alleles are present together in a hybrid, only one allele expresses itself, while the other remains hidden. So remember, characters are controlled by alleles. Alleles occur in pairs. In a hybrid, only one allele is expressed. The expressed allele is called dominant. The hidden allele is called recessive. This is the essence of Mendel's law of dominance. Students, based on Mendel's observations, the law of dominance explains how one allele expresses itself in the hybrid, while the other remains hidden. However, as scientists continued to study inheritance in different organisms, they discovered that this law does not apply perfectly in every situation. Some exceptions to the law of dominance were observed, the most important being incomplete dominance and codominance. Now, don't worry about these concepts right now. We will study both of them in detail in our upcoming lectures. For the moment, it is simply important to remember that although the law of dominance explains many inheritance patterns, scientists later found certain cases where the inheritance pattern was different, leading to these exceptions. So, as we move forward in genetics, we will see that nature is even more fascinating and sometimes behaves differently from what Mendel originally observed. That's all for today's lecture, students. Today, we explored Mendel's laws of dominance.